Hi, in this video we're going to talk about callable bonds, as you can see. So let's get into the definition. A callable bond is a bond in which the issuer reserves the right to redeem the bond at different discrete times. This idea of redeeming the bond at different times, that's referred to as calling the bond. And there might be different redemption values, possibly for different redemption values. So remember what a bond is it's a loan. Types of bonds, the most common types of bonds can be categorized as either municipal bonds, government bonds, or corporate bonds. I don't know that I've ever seen a government bond, a municipal bond that was callable, and so most callable bonds will be corporate bonds. And so I'm thinking of the context of us buying a corporate callable bond. And so remember, what we're doing is when we pay for that bond, we're lending our money to the company, and then the company's going to pay us back over time. They're going to pay us some coupons over time, and then they'll pay us the redemption value. And you can kind of think of that redemption value as being the final payment, back and paying us back a big chunk of money that finally pays us off, that pays the loan off. So that's how we can think of the redemption value. Well, a callable bond is one in which the issuer of the bond has set certain dates at which time they might call the bond. It's possible they will call the bond at this date, or maybe another date, or maybe another date in the future, these discrete time periods. And maybe they'll call it for different amounts. They'll redeem it at the first date for one amount, at the second date for a second amount, and at a third date for a third amount. All of this is known at all of those dates, and all of those amounts that the bond will be redeemed at are known at time zero when we purchase the bond. Now, we don't know when the bond is going to be called. They reserve the right to call it at those different, to redeem the bond at those different dates, but they can't choose some other date other than what they have agreed upon at purchase. So there's like this contract between us and the company that spells out when they're able to pay us off. Okay, so that's what a callable bond is. You'll get, if I didn't explain that well enough, you'll see some examples, and when we do some examples, hopefully they'll be more clear. Okay, so let me make a comment about something I just made, a statement I made earlier. When a callable bond is bought, when we buy a callable bond, no one knows when the bond is going to be called or when it will be redeemed. Again, once the bond is called or redeemed, they pay us the redemption value, their obligation to us is over. It's like they paid off the loan and there's no more payments that are that they owe us. Okay, so no one's going to know. When we buy the bond, no one knows when the bond will be called. The company doesn't know when they're going to call the bond. We don't know when they're going to call the bond. However, there are only fixed dates in the future that they're able to do so. So it can only be called at one of the times agreed upon at the issue. At issue means at the time that the bond was issued, or when we bought the bond. Okay, and then finally, callable bond problems are going to be very obvious by the wording of the problem. You'll see the word callable in the wording of the problem. And so don't read that into a problem that's not there. Almost, the vast majority of all the problems are not going to be callable bond problems. So you might see one on your test. You may not even see any callable bond problems on your FM exam. So unless you're told, I'm looking at the second sentence of that last paragraph, unless told that the bond is callable within the wording of the problem, then just assume all bonds are held to maturity and redeemed for whatever the stated redemption value is, or it might be an implied redemption value. I'll get to that statement in the example. Okay, let's look at the types of questions related to callable bonds. One type of question will be to determine the maximum price that can be paid for the bond in order to guarantee a certain yield rate. And then the other common type of callable bond question is to determine the minimum yield rate for a bond that was bought at a certain price. We'll do some examples, and hopefully that will be you'll see how to attack these types of problems. In fact, let me go ahead and give you the problem-solving strategies. The first type of problem, if it's a problem where we want to determine the maximum price that can be paid for the bond in order to guarantee a certain yield rate, then form a two-column table and populate this two-column table, where the first column is the first column is the end value. The end value is the time at which the bond is called, and then the second column is the price. The price in order to receive the desired yield rate based on the bond being called at that particular end value. For each end value, there will be a price that corresponds to that end value that is paid in order to receive the desired yield rate. So populate this table. This is kind of the trickier of the two types of problems, because the problem says we'll be asked to determine the maximum price that can be paid for the bond in order to guarantee a certain yield rate. But when we populate this table, on the right-hand column, then the column on the right, we have these different price amounts, and the maximum price that can be paid in order to guarantee a certain yield rate is actually the lowest price, the minimum price in that table. Okay, so that's a little bit tricky. I'll go through an example in the next video. We'll do an example on this. Okay, and then the second problem-solving strategy for the second type problem is we're going to proceed the same way. This is the type of problem where we determine a minimum yield rate for a bond that was bought at a certain price. And again, we populate this two-column table. The first column is the same as in the previous type problem. So in either one of these types of problems, you create a two-column table. The first column is just the end value, the time at which the bond is called. In this particular problem, we have what the price is. The bond was bought at a certain price. So for each one of those end values in the first column, we look at what the yield rate was to get the price that was given to us in the problem. It was bought at a certain price. We know what the price is, and then we look at, well, what is the yield rate that would correspond to that price at each of these end values. And then there's nothing really tricky in this one. We're asked to determine the minimum yield rate, and then the column on the right is a bunch of different yield rates, and we just choose the lowest yield rate in that table. So that's the problem-solving strategy for question number 2. Okay, in the next video, we'll look at some examples. All right, see you then.